Okay, let's do it. Let's get into it.
Let's do this. Well, we're starting today by talking about something that I call the myth of lazy. If you've been out in the world, my friend, you have seen help wanted signs everywhere, right?
Yes.
We all know that many businesses are struggling to hire. And if you've been on social media at all, there's this kind of collective narrative that has been out in the world. And it's been out for a while. It rears its ugly head from time to time, even before the pandemic, but I'm hearing it now more than ever. And it's this idea that, well, people just don't want to work.
Yes.
This idea that, well, people are lazy, and that the reason that so many organizations are struggling to fill roles right now is because of a lack of work ethic or people mooching off the government, right? I've had many conversations and seen many things posted about, well, the little bit of extra unemployment is keeping people from taking jobs. I had a conversation at a conference recently with a dear, intelligent, respected colleague who said, well, the problem is stimulus. Everybody got stimulus, and they went on vacation, or they don't want to work because they got stimulus, and there's just no data to back any of that up. Go ahead.
I'll jump in at the bit because, my whole take on this is obviously mine's not based upon anything with data. It's what I have seen in my coaching practice. It is what I have felt myself, is that throughout this period of time, we have blurred the lines of work and life, if you will, so much that people have completely burned themselves the heck out. And now that people are starting to say, no, sir, no more. This is what I want. This is when I want it. And I'm not going to settle or make myself available for more than what I want in my life. The moment we put up those boundaries and we tried to reestablish, then you get this. People are lazy. People don't want to work. That mentality of the whole, we're just the products, the widgets that we've made, the productivity machinery, right? I call BS on that too.
Yeah. And so much of what you described is a part of this collective restacking of our values that has taken place during and since the pandemic. Since doesn't feel like the right word, since we're still in the thick of it. But let's think about what happened during the pandemic, right? A lot of businesses, think about the businesses that are struggling to hire people the most right now, which are restaurants and retail. And so many of them endured closures, endured furloughs. So many folks who work in those industries were told, you're going to have to figure out how to live with less work. Yeah. And guess what happened? They figured out how to live with less work. And, and these are folks who are saying, you know what? I can get by, or I am not going to continue to endlessly suffer in these roles that are so challenging when there are new opportunities and better opportunities out there for me now. The industries that are struggling the most to hire staff, restaurants and retail, are typically the roles that have the lowest pay, lousy hours, high stress at work, rude customers, and little to no benefits. And all of a sudden, these folks have said, wait a minute, I can get a call center job working from home during banker's hours for the same pay? Why am I killing myself waiting tables all night in these environments for less than? And so that, I think, is a big part of this. There's been this collective shift around quality of life, and some of these industries are going to have to figure out how to catch up with that in a way that's going to be really challenging.
Absolutely. Those are some brilliant points to bring up. And I think the thing that those of us who are not in those industries need to remember is, how are we a part of the problem? Or how can we help to try to dismantle some of those biggest challenges in retail, in restaurants? Meaning, number one, be a freaking decent human being whenever you go into these establishments.
Right. Right.
I mean, there's a reason why there's a term called a Karen. There's a reason why people are filmed at the airlines going crazy. I mean, people need to take a step. I get enraged just thinking about watching those videos of people getting enraged.
Alyssa has wild eyes right now if you're watching on the YouTube channel.
It's kindness counts. It counts so much. And I think that as a person who partakes in those industries, who goes to stores, who goes to restaurants, it is incumbent upon us to re-establish our expectations of the people that fill those roles.
There's a meme going around lately that I really quite like. It says, "The whole world is short-staffed right now. Be kind to those who showed up." And
Yeah.
it's absolutely true. And I think the businesses who are able to attract and keep talent are going to be those who most quickly accept that this is a total sea change, that this is a paradigm shift. Oh, I used one of those HR phrases. No, paradigm shift. But it's true. We're not going back to the way it was. We are not going to have, if I'm running a restaurant or a retail store, we are not going to have access to the talent pool that we had before the pandemic.
Right.
Because the entire world has figured out how to make remote work, how to make work from home work, and it is a sea change for a lot of industries who are now going to be robbing your prior talent pool of the people who relied on the restaurant and the retail industry. And so the things that these industries have to do in order to now attract talent and retain talent are actually the same things that all industries are going to have to do. So, we have a lot of folks who listen to our podcast who work in healthcare, who work in technology, who work in kind of traditional white collar, quote unquote, roles. And so the things that they have to do to attract and retain talent are the same things that restaurants and retail are going to have to do. And namely, higher pay, yes, but also changes related to quality of life, flexible schedules, better workload distribution, better leader training and support. This is another reason why restaurants and retail are struggling a little bit, because we know those industries typically have little training or support for leaders. Those folks who are in leadership roles are promoted based on tenure, or they're the owner. And the result is that restaurants and retail everywhere are filled with bad bosses. And, I'm not trying to paint with too broad a brush here. I'm not making a broad sweeping generalization that's not founded in the data. We know that those industries typically do not have leadership development and support programming for folks who supervise others. And anecdotally, on our BossBetter Now YouTube channel and whatnot, the comments that we get overwhelmingly about bad bosses and being frustrated with leadership come from those industries. And so if I go to work and I endure any of those things that we just listed related to hours and pay and schedule and rude customers, and I have a like you said, a bad human being, right? If I work for somebody who barks at me and yells at me and treats me like crap, it's not sustainable. And so these are the things that all industries are going to have to do. They're going to have to think about that leader training and support. And the other thing too, Alyssa, is regardless of what industry I work in, what we know about human nature is that employees want to have a voice. They want to have some influence. And so coming to work and just being told what to do and when to do it without having any chance to influence how, when, or where I work, that's robbing people of what they need to be successful in this day and age as well.
And that's not lazy. That's empowerment, right? So trying to understand our own maybe slanted backgrounds of what productivity and what work actually looks like in order to be deemed worthy, and how many hours and all of the rest of that, gotta start taking the back seat there on those old washed up habits. It's a new land out there. Just like you said, we have to try to change at the highest levels. The pool is going to change. We're in a whole other ocean now.
and the myth of lazy is debunked by the data that we do have. So we know that, and I brought stats. Get ready.
You brought stats.
Here
oh
we
boy.
go. We had 4 million people who left their jobs in April, and the numbers were similar in May and June. So, almost 12 billion people in the last few months who have left their jobs. And when you look at the data among all separations, and this is according to the latest job openings and labor turnover survey, across all separations, so you're talking about layoffs, firings, retirement, quitting, etc.
Okay.
Straight up quitting made up 69% of all total separations. And it's being sparked. This is what the latest job openings and labor turnover survey has said. It is sparked by people's confidence that they can get a better job. That has nothing to do with lazy. It's not that people don't want to work. It's that they don't want to endlessly suffer anymore in a job that takes a toll. It doesn't mean that people aren't willing to deal with difficulty or stress at work. This is a really important point, I think, right? Because the shade that we end up throwing at these kids today is that they just can't tolerate the hardship that I've dealt with in my job. And that's bunk. The suffering has been constant. The suffering if you think about our frontline healthcare workers in the last 19, 20 months, the compassion fatigue was gone a year ago. Okay, the people are willing to endure ups and downs and hard times and stress and difficulty, but it can't be 24/7. When it does, people get fried, they get burned out, and they say, "I need to do something else because otherwise, I'm dying slowly. It's death by 1,000 cuts."
Absolutely. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but it reminds me of this whole thing again of people establishing boundaries, and that boundaries are the highest form of self-compassion.
Absolutely, yes.
And so if we can orient ourselves to the fact that it's not lazy, that's self-compassion. And if you think that that's lazy, then maybe you need to direct some of that self-compassion towards yourself and then start directing it outward too. So every time we go into a restaurant, every time we enter a store, every time we interact with our fellow freaking humans out there, compassion.
Absolutely. And the other side of this is that those boundaries are relative to the opportunities available to us to set them. And what I mean by that is that in a super tight job market where there isn't as much opportunity, I maybe don't have as much flex in my life to set those boundaries. Okay, I need a job. I got to pay my bills. And the only things available to me based on my education or experience are these kinds of roles with these kinds of hours in these kinds of settings. And so I settle, and maybe I settled for a while. But in this market, when there is so much opportunity and so many people are hiring, I have all the leverage as an employee.
Yep.
I now have the potential to set better boundaries, to say, I'm going to take a job that allows me to be at my kids' after-school activities now for the first time in years. I'm going to set boundaries for myself that say, I'm going to prioritize different things in my life or my health. This is what happened during the pandemic. People who were forced to live with less work suddenly find themselves exercising more or eating healthier or spending more time with their kids, and they're living a better quality of life. And so in this market where opportunity allows that to be a boundary now, it's what's happening.
Oh, you just triangled the heck out of all of that. Ding, ding, ding. I'll triangle you.
A triangle of strength. And I want to say one more thing about this, because this is where it kind of gets my goat. And I almost made this one of our Stop It segments, but I didn't want to rant.
Rant away.
But to bring our triangle full circle.
Oh God, too far.
Sorry. The laziness is actually on the part of the people who are espousing the view that people don't want to work because they're lazy. That view itself is lazy. It's really easy to espouse a broad character defect on a whole group of nameless, faceless people. That just betrays a deep cynicism, right, about people. But it levels a values judgment against people. And even worse than that, it's just fundamentally not true. Like when you talk to people, when you look at data, when you go out into the world and you find out why people aren't working, are there lazy people? Are a few people being like, yeah, you know what, I don't want to work and I'm going to mooch off the government a little bit? Of course there are. But it is a smattering. It is a sprinkling compared to the overwhelming majority of people who are out there. So it's lazy and an uninformed opinion. And we see that opinion a lot across generations, right? The number of folks who want to label the generation coming in behind them as having a lesser work ethic or lower, less established values.
Yeah.
There is no research or data that bears that out. And so that too is lazy. I mean, yes, some people aren't wanting to work, but it's a smattering. And that's not unique to the generation coming in behind you. There have been lazy people forever, right? In every generation. And
Yeah.
so the next time you see your crazy uncle post on Facebook about how these people today, nobody wants to work and it's people don't have a work ethic. If you want to engage, go ahead and engage. I don't do that because I just don't have the patience for it, especially on the cesspool that is Facebook. But know that it's a myth. It's not true, and there's nothing out there that bears it out.